Good evening. Welcome to This Week in Review. Tonight's stories include interview with our MHA David Gilbert, interview with public health nurse Kathleen Matthews, Halloween is over for another year, the Red Cross held a blood donor clinic in Burgeo. These stories and more coming up after this. Tuesday was October 31st, otherwise known as Halloween. We were out and about on Tuesday to see what creatures were out on this special occasion. Our first stop was at the Calder Healthcare Center. The grade 2 students decided to include the chronic care patients in their Halloween party. As you will see, not only the grade 2s were out in costume. There were just as many unusual sights at A.J. Matthews School on Tuesday afternoon, as the students and teachers there did a little celebrating of their own.
Happy Halloween, everybody!
As Tuesday went by and darkness crept in, trick-or-treaters took to the streets to collect goodies, the favorite part of this occasion for many.
Hi! Lots and lots of trick-or-treaters.
Hi, Candy.
Candy inside in your basket. Well, one for you. One for you. You're welcome. One for you.
Thank you.
Oops. Did I put them in your bag, Angela?
Jelly for me.
Well, we got Indians and ghosts and goblins. There you go. Hi.
Whose house is this?
Who's this? This is my house, the Wicked Witch.
Trick or treat.
You always gotta have a witch on Halloween, right? Always gotta be a witch on Halloween and in your basket. There you are. You're welcome.
Trick or treat. Trick or treat.
Thank you. You're welcome. Hey, you're all by yourself. Your mom with you? No. See you. Well, hi. Trick or treat. Are you getting a lot of treats? Yeah. Pretty good, eh? There you are. You're welcome. Bye. I'm a witch. Am I a wicked old witch? You're Casper. Bye.
The Red Cross held a blood donor clinic at the Lions Center this past week. The Burgeo Lioness members volunteered their time to help the Red Cross with the clinic.
These are black. I hate black. I hate it. No, sir. I don't know why. I hate it. I don't just have pair of them black casual pants and two clips and devil skirt. That is because everything sticks out. But now I don't want no more of this. It's 30 away.
Because you know my there's really possibly nobody that's more
A bit chilly today, isn't it? But nice.
Oh
nice
yes,
though.
they're nice.
Good and close.
Yeah.
Damn
Nice and yours too.
Yeah.
Again, as you said, Amanda, wonderful. I would take and perhaps you take one of the smaller ones. You said
This one stays on your skin for 30 seconds. I don't have iodine there.
this is a wonderful. And the tanker. And they like to do a smaller tanker. Again, very versatile. And don't smaller. No, don't go layers. Up and down, smaller. And just one shot. Always straight line.
Okay, ready?
don't know if you're happy with that, David.
I'm not happy about it. Not one bit happy. Neither is she. He just thinks that, that's all. Aggie, do me a favor, will you get me a 10 pin and a 5 pin for these 2 meters?
Stay with us. There's more of This Week in Review still to come. This year's grade 4 students will be the first students to receive a vaccination against hepatitis B. I spoke with Kathleen Matthews, public health nurse, to find out more about this vaccination. With me in the studio today, I have Kathleen Matthews, public health nurse here in Burgeo. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about hepatitis B?
Hepatitis B is a virus that's been around for a while. It's one of 5 viruses that are classed as hepatitis, and that goes from A, B, C, D to E. And it's a virus that attacks the liver.
What are some symptoms of hepatitis B?
You can get anorexia, which is basically weight loss and loss of appetite. You can get fatigue, general unwellness. You can feel really just generally ill. You can have some abdominal discomfort. Usually it's vague. You can have nausea with vomiting, some joint pain, muscle aches. Usually you could get some jaundice, which is yellowing of the skin and the eyes. Some people never do get that though, however. And some people have no symptoms at all. They feel like they've had a mild flu.
Okay, how is this disease transmitted?
This is a blood and body fluids transmitted disease. Most common methods of transfusion, most common methods of transmission include things like fluids from sexual activity. There was a concern about the blood supply, tainted transfusions and that, but that has been addressed. IV drug use from an infected mom to a baby, usually around the time of birth. You can get some occupational exposures through needles and syringes, things like that. At-risk people in those areas would be people like nurses, lab techs, embalmers. And if you're a household contact of someone who is a chronic carrier or actively infected with hepatitis B.
Why has the Department of Health decided to vaccinate children against hepatitis B?
They want to protect children when they become sexually active, and that was the prime reason for opting to immunize children.
Why were the grade 4 students chosen to receive this vaccination?
It was looked at across the country, and what they're hoping for is that grade 4 is the optimum age to protect them when they do become sexually active. And it has some practical advantages as well, in that grade 4s usually aren't having problems with truancy, and usually you don't have to be concerned about grade 4s dropping out of school. In the older grades, that has been a concern, even as low as grade 6.
Well, parents have to sign their consent before the child receives this vaccination.
Yes, every child that receives this vaccination, the parents will be required to sign a written consent. The consent is good for the 3 injections, and if at any time the parent wishes to retract the consent, they can let the public health nurse know in writing.
Would you recommend that they give their consent for this?
Yes, I certainly would. It's a very beneficial vaccine.
Okay, you mentioned that the vaccination is in 3 injections. Why is it in 3 as opposed to 1?
This is based on research that's shown that you need the full 3 injections to actually protect and give immunity. And that's why they went with 3 injections.
Okay, what about children that are above the grade 4 level and adults? Can they get this vaccination as well?
Any individual in Newfoundland right now that is in a high-risk group will be offered the vaccine free from the Department of Health. and that's based on an assessment of risk. However, if you have children older than grade 4 and you wish to have them immunized, you can take them to your physician and pay for the immunization, and they will get it through their physician. The Department of Health is looking at the numbers of requests we're getting for people above grade 4 to get this immunization, and they're hoping to review the policy within a year. At that time, they may decide that they can extend the program, but right now they just don't have the resources to offer it to anybody other than the grade 4s or at-risk individuals.
You mentioned that vaccinations help reduce your chances of contracting hepatitis B. What can people do to prevent contracting this disease?
There are some very real things that people can do to prevent this. Number one would be immunization of at-risk individuals. So if you are in a high-risk group, then you really should consider getting yourself immunized. Safer sex practices go a long way to preventing a whole lot of sexually transmitted diseases, and that includes hepatitis B. Modification of any high-risk behavior certainly helps. An example of that would be nurses used to recap needles. Now they don't, because there's a risk of stabbing yourself with a contaminated needle. Public education is a big one, and that, you know, just making people aware that the disease is out there, how it's transmitted, and that it can be prevented. Screening of blood and blood products by organizations such as the Red Cross has gone a long way to making the blood supply a lot safer. And that's one of the major things that's gone on in the prevention of hepatitis B. And it should be noted that you cannot get hepatitis B or AIDS by donating blood. The equipment is all sterile, and there's absolutely no risk to the donor of contracting any of these diseases.
Okay, Nurse Matthews, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Just that it's the immunizations, they take half a minute. They're not overly uncomfortable, and for the long-term benefits, they're well worth it.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank you for coming in and speaking with us today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Our guest today is Nurse Kathleen Matthews, public health nurse here in Burgeo.
Thank you.
A great deal of concern has been raised about student behavior at and around the intersection near the post office, especially during arrival and dismissal times. This is perhaps the busiest intersection in town, especially around the noon-hour break at the high school. Students are failing to use the crosswalks or even look before crossing the street. Bicycles pose a problem in this area also, as students are darting in and out of traffic and individuals. Fortunately, there have been no mishaps yet, but as this behavior continues, sooner or later someone won't be so lucky. The Town Council have crosswalks in place. Please take that extra few seconds to look both ways and cross the street at the crosswalks. MHA for Burgeo Beta Spare, the Honorable Dave Gilbert, was in town this past week. During his visit, Mr. Gilbert stopped by our studio for this interview. First of all, welcome to our studio once again, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you, David. It's nice to be back again.
Can you tell us the nature of your visit to Burgeo at this time?
Well, it's just a normal routine visit, and I'm going to stay Saturday night and go to the Fireman's Ball, and it's always a pleasure to come to Burgeo, but particularly to go to the Fireman's Ball, because I think that the Burgeo Fire Department is one that the people of this town should be very proud of, and of course I'm sort of proud of it too, because I understand from talking to the chief that I'm the only honorary fireman that they have made outside of someone who has retired as a fireman. So I feel I have an attachment to the fire department here in Burgeo greater than I do in some places. But again, you know, people don't realize that a volunteer fire department is an organization that you hope you never have to find out how valuable they are, because if you do, there's usually a tragedy that happens and then you find out, or something colossal like the fire they had in Ramey a couple of years ago. So I'm always happy to show up in Burgeo when I'm invited by the firemen to attend their celebration once a year, and to bring them the best wishes from government and to thank them for the valuable service that they're performing, and I hope they're never called to go to work.
I understand that you were at the town hall today for anyone that wanted to speak with you. What were some of the more common concerns that were brought to your attention today?
Well, there was nothing really that was, you know, major. It was people that again, had trouble with the red tape of government. And this is why I try to come in at least once a month. You know, people that had trouble with tags program or social service problems or the mundane stuff, not the stuff that politicians can get up and get on the platform and talk about, but the reason that a politician is elected, really. So, you know, if a politician gets elected and forgets to come back and sit down and do these mundane, routine jobs that people expect them, so it gives the people of Burgeo and the opportunity to see that I'm available and prepared to help in the problems and try to revel out some of the red tape that they get involved in.
The education reform is a major topic in the House at present. Will the education reform affect the schools here in Burgeo in any way?
Well, I hope it'll improve them. That's what this exercise was all about, that, you know, the government felt that the education system as we had was in some way hampered by the fact that the control of the education system was in the hands of the various religious organizations. Now, what that meant was that the money was in the hands of the religious organizations, and this government felt that the religious organizations should have control over the spiritual needs of the schools, but the actual administration and the handling of the money should be in the school boards. And this is why we're, with this reform in the education, where you're going to see that the school boards are going to be cut down from the 30 or something that they're now down to 7 or 8. The money will be put into the boards, and they will spend it as the needs comes up. For instance, right now there's a need. The people of Burgeo perceive a need for a gymnasium here in the school, the new gymnasium here in the school in Burgeo, even though there was a new roof put on it about 4 years ago. There's a leak and there's some problems. The superintendent of the board and the business manager are going to be in here on Monday, tomorrow, to look after it, to have a look at it and see what it is. But to give you an example, if the money was made available for a capital expenditure to build a gymnasium here in Burgeo under the current system before the reform, say there was $2 million. There had to be another $2 million go to the Catholic school board, and about $600,000 goes into the Pentecostal school board. Even though there mightn't be a designated need, but I mean, if they spent it that way, they had to spend basically, they had to give the same to the Catholics and a lesser amount depending on the population of the religious group, like the Pentecostal. They had to get their share of it, even though they mightn't have a perceived need. But I mean, this board here, the Western Integrated Board, might have a perceived need, and there might be $2 million needed to build a gymnasium in Burgeo. But you couldn't, if you gave the integrated $2 million, you had to give it to the other denominations. Now what will happen with this reform in the education is that the money will be allocated on a needs basis to, you know, wherever it's needed. I won't be one religion saying that you gave that much to the Protestants, now you got to give this much to the Catholics. That's one of the things that will disappear. But bearing in mind that what people were trying to say is that they wanted to take God out of the schools. That will not happen. I mean, the you know, the ministers from the various denominations will be still allowed to go into the schools, and there will be time set aside to give the religious training that's required. The only thing that has gone with this reform in the education is that the administration will be given back to the boards and the people.
Okay, another topic that's always of great concern here in Burgeo is fishery. Have you heard anything further relating to the Burgeo plant from Mr. Barry or anyone?
I haven't heard anything directly from Mr. Barry. I understand that I have received a copy of a letter that the President of the Union wrote to the Minister of Fisheries, the provincial Minister of Fishing, asking him to intercede with Mr. Barry to see if he would, you know, come back to Burgeo and start the plant up again and stuff like that. Now, I don't know what has happened there. I don't think that the province will be getting directly involved with Mr. Barry. I would say that, you know, unofficially, someone from the Department of Fisheries might have phoned Mr. Barry, and I understand that, you know, that Mr. Barry might be interested in talking again. I don't know. I can't speak for Mr. Barry, and I can't speak for the department. You know, and I mean, as I said many times in this deal. I think that the first thing that's got to happen is that the union and Mr. Barry have got to settle down and have a talk and get their differences straightened away before we can have anything positive to say about the fish plant here in Burgeo.
Okay, what are the latest reports on the rebuilding of the cod stocks?
Everything that I hear is positive, David. I'm hearing that there is a good chance that the inshore fishery in 3PS and 3PN is going to be open sooner than anyone had expected it would be. Now, I don't know when that means, if it means, you know, the coming spring or maybe this time next year, but sooner than they had anticipated, because the sentinel fishery that's been in place from Cape St. Mary's to Port aux Basques has shown to be a lot more successful than people thought there was, and there's a stock of fish there that the scientists didn't think would rebuild as fast as it is. So and this is right this whole coast. The sentinel fishery has been a surprise. Now, the northeast coast hasn't been as successful, but of course that was always a different fishery. The northeast coast was a trap fishery that took place in July and August. So the sentinel fishery, I don't know, you know, if it have the same significance there, if you could really put a figure on it, what really is the problem there. But I think the south coast has shown that it has rebuilt. My best guess is that there, yes, is going to be a positive response from the Department of Fisheries, and there's going to be, I would say, a demand from the inshore fishermen along this coast to have this fishery open sooner rather than later.
Okay, Mr. Gilbert, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't think so, David. It's just, like I say, it's going to be back, and this is you know, I'm in touch all the time, and I'm hoping that I'll be back again before Christmas to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Okay, Mr. Gilbert, well, we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come in and speak with us.
Thank you, David.
Stay with us. There's more of This Week in Review coming up following these words from tonight's sponsor. Off the rack. This week, as we scanned our tape racks, we came across a demonstration held in November of 1989 concerning the local plant here in Burgeo. Here are a few highlights from that demonstration. BBS. Religious On Tuesday night at 7 p.m., we'll have a video from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Video Library entitled Norwegian Fishing and Trolls X System. This will be followed at 8 p.m. by BBS West Viking College Educational Television. Join the Lioness for TV Bingo on Wednesday at 7 p.m. and you might be the next lucky $300 winner. But remember, you can't win if you don't play. Following bingo, we'll have an informative video about the hepatitis B virus. Join us again on Thursday night at 8 p.m. for BBS West Viking College Educational Television. Please note that due to the Remembrance Day service, Pansy's Garden will air at 2 p.m. on Saturday afternoon instead of 11 a.m. Join us at 6 p.m. on Saturday for the Remembrance Day service. And be sure and join us next week for a documentary on the sea freeze situation here in Burgeo. I will be speaking with a number of individuals on the current status of the local plant, including sea freeze owner Bill Barry. Following next week's program, we'll have a video entitled Pushing All the Right Buttons, the Fogwa Island Accordion Group. Stay with us now for the season premiere of The Bandwagon. For This Week in Review, I'm Dave Cooper. Good night.